Let's look at the filters that are provided by Angular. Angular provides us two filters that work with strings. These are the uppercase and lowercase filters. These do exactly what you would think. They take a piece of string data and either uppercase it or lowercase it. So here's our app as it currently stands. Let's say that we want the title of our course to be in all uppercase. We can just go into our event details page, go to where the event name is at, and using the format of filters, we add a pipe, and then the name of the filter, which in this case is uppercase. And let's see that in the browser. And you can see that it's uppercase, the name of the event, as it rendered it. Angular also provides a couple of different filters to format numbers. Those are the number filter and the currency filter. Now we don't really have any numbers that we're binding to in our application, so let's just show an example. I'll go down here just above our HR, and I'll create a new div. And inside that div, we'll do some binding, and I'll just paste in the first several digits of pi. Now, let's say I want to format that and only print out the first two digits. So I'm going to say number and then 2. Refresh that, and you can see that I'm only getting the first two digits of pi. But if I had a shorter number, say just 3, and I wanted it to always show with 2 decimal places, I could do the same thing and it forces it out to 2 decimal places. Now for currency, let's imagine that we are going to have a price with our events. And I'll just change this to 34. So I'll add the currency filter. And now you can see the price is showing up with both the currency symbol and the right number of decimal places. Now it's displaying the default currency symbol for my locale because I didn't specify a different currency symbol, but you can add a parameter that indicates this currency symbol that you want to show. Angular also provides a filter for formatting dates. Let's open up our controller, and let's imagine that inside of our data we're actually using real dates instead of just strings. So let's change this over to a JavaScript date. Now of course we don't want that number to print out. Instead we want to format that as a date. So let's go into our date and we'll add the filter date, and we'll give it the parameter of medium. And we can see that it's taken that date and formatted out according to its medium date formatting specification. I don't really like that one, so let's change it to medium date. And that one just gives us the actual date and not the time. There are a lot of different built-in formats for dates that Angular provides, and if you look at the official documentation you can see all the variations. And of course there's a custom format as well, so you can specify everything down to the commas and how many digits to the year and month and day and all that. The next filter that Angular provides is a JSON filter. This is mostly going to be used for debugging. In case you need to print out exactly what an object is at a given moment, you can use the JSON filter and write this out. So as an example of this, I'm going to go down in here and add another div. And this time I'm going to put an object in here. If you look at this object, it's got 2 levels to it. It's got 3 properties, and the third property is another object. And then I'll specify the JSON filter. Go back to our browser and let's refresh. And you can see that it's taken that object and printed out according to the JSON specification, which can be useful when debugging our program, and certainly could be useful in other applications as well. The last 3 built-in filters that we're going to look at are used with the ngRepeat directive, and they modify the data set that is used in that ngRepeat. Those filters are order by, limit to, and filter. The order by obviously lets you order your data by a certain field. Limit to allows you to limit your records to a certain number of records. And filter allows you to filter the data set by an expression. In order to demonstrate this, we're going to add some new capabilities to our application. Let's go down into our ngRepeat. And after the expression that I give the ngRepeat, I'm going to add a filter here. And I'm going to add order by. And I'm going to give it a parameter of sort order. I'm going to go over to my controller, and I'm going to specify a default sort order. And we'll set that to name. So by default, Angular is going to sort our data by the name field. Now if we scroll down a little bit and look, you can see that the names of our sessions are actually already in alphabetical order by name. So if we go to our website and refresh it, we're not going to see anything new. But if we go over here and change this to something else, let's change this to upvote count. Again, nothing's changed, but if I come over here and vote, all of a sudden it's begun to sort by the upvote count. Now it's not doing what I want it to do because it's putting the vote count down at the bottom. So in order to make this go by descending, I simply put a dash in front of the expression. Now when I refresh and vote on one of them, that will go to the top. Now this is nice, but let's say that we want to allow the user to be able to change the sort order. So let's go back into our HTML, and we're going to add a drop down. Right after our sessions header, let's create an order by, and let's set it to a select. And I'm going to use the ng model directive, which we will explain later on in this module, and set it to sort order. And we're going to set the class to input small, just so it's formatted nicely. And I'm going to give it two options. And then I'm going to go back to my event controller, and I'll make the default name again. Now let's view this. Okay, I'm ordering by name, but I'm going to vote this up a couple of times and then change the sort order to votes. And now you can see that Angular is automatically updating the HTML whenever I change this drop-down value and setting the sort order correctly to what I want it to be. Now let's look at an example of the limit to directive. Let's say for some reason I only wanted to show 2 sessions at a time. I can go in here and I can add the limit to filter and give it a parameter of 2. Now when we go back to our browser, if I refresh the page, you can see that I'm only showing 2 sessions and not all 3. In this particular scenario, that's not very useful, but in other scenarios this can be very useful to make sure that you're only showing a certain number of values from a data set. Now let's add one more piece of functionality. Let's give the users the ability to filter the sessions by difficulty. In order to do that, we'll have to go back into our HTML, and we're going to have to give them another drop-down in order to choose the difficulty they want to see. And we'll create a variable called query to hold that expression. We'll default it to all, but we'll also add in an option for each of the levels that we've got. Now since the default is to show all, and that corresponds to no value inside of query, we don't have to set a default inside of our controller. So the only other piece we have to do is go down to our ng repeat and add in that filter. Now if we go back to our browser and refresh it, we can see that we've now got this other drop down that indicates what level we want to see. And if we select a value, it will filter our data set only to records that match that value. Now one of the things that you may have noticed is that nowhere did I actually specify which field I want to limit my query to. What Angular is actually doing is searching the entire record for any piece of data that matches. So for example, if I go into our data and I go into this directives master class, which is of level advanced, and add in the word introductory to the name, go back to our browser and refresh and select introductory, you can see it's actually still selecting these 2 records. So let's go back into our HTML and let's specify which field we actually care about. And we do that by going onto the ng model, and we specify that we're looking for a query.level. This will mean that we're only looking in the level field when we want to match this query. And then let's go back to our browser and refresh our page. And if we select introductory, now we're only seeing the record that has an introductory level. And that is a brief introduction to the built-in filters in Angular. Now let's review with a quiz. How do you indicate a parameter to a filter? The way you indicate parameters to filters is by after the filter name you give a colon and then the parameter. Can you limit a filter to only search into a specific field? Yes. you can modify the filter by giving the field name as well as the filter name, and that will limit that filter to only look in a certain field. Can you specify custom date formats with the date filter? Yes, the date filter not only has a bunch of predefined formats, it also allows you to specify a custom format.